The next speaker, James Tenser, president of VSN Media, will take us back to the store to deliver brand messages. James, the podium is yours.
Well, thank you, John. It's really great to be back at the Lead Marketing Conference again. Always a privilege and a pleasure. Um, and the entire realm of loyalty engagement, analytics, digital is an area of great interest and has been for me my entire career. A year ago, I talked about what I called retail media ecology, right, or how advertising technology was affecting the shared business culture between brands and retailers. And today I want to shift the focus back to the stores because the pendulum has swung. So I went too far. There we go. Uh, the frenzy continues without a doubt for retailers. And the, sorry, excuse me. Uh, the search for monetization has dominated the discussion. Monetization of shopper data, bringing alternative revenue into the retail financial formula. It's not a brand new thing. In fact, I was looking the other day at a analyst presentation from the Kroger organization from 2017 that made reference to these terms. Uh, but it's really heated up in the last 2 years. We've talked about reaching audiences in the stores, though, for a long time. For some reason, we sort of lost our way. That's not true anymore. Now we're coming back to the store. After all, 8 in 10 transactions are still happening. 8 in 10 audience opportunities are still occurring there. So let's look back at that early period, right? 96 to 2000. These are images that I collected over the years in my covering this in-store media concept. And, there's some of these are going to be familiar. I point out on the far left, the instant coupon machine, the Catalina marketing printer with the red tape with the red edges in the center. But also there were static ads on shopping carts, shelf talkers. You see an example of a kiosk with a video screen. That's a little bit more recent. Floor graphics. These were efforts to put persuasive advertising messages in front of shoppers at the moment of decision. Even package labels do that to some degree, and all offered some degree of measurability. But to be honest, the measurement was pretty lax because brands didn't want to confront the reality of poor in-store implementation. And so it was pretty much limited to promotion lift. That was pretty much the measurement, I think, at that time. Um, uh, Act Media, the instant coupon machine, and Catalina, they had some superiority because they delivered coupons in the retail store environment, and you could count redemptions. So that did succeed in bringing some new dollars to the retail environment, and they did it without transferring the funds from trade budgets, but rather at that time mostly from consumer promotion budgets. Well, now we have some newer channels worth discussing, and this is fun. I would like to have more images I've been collecting, but what we're looking at here are four current examples. The top left is kind of fascinating. Those are door graphics. They are animated. That is, they can be full motion video in front of refrigerator cases in a retail environment. This example, there was a video. If you were to watch that video, you would see the screens changing. So in effect, they've created new real estate in the door fronts. Not a brand new idea, but still something that is gaining in frequency and popularity. Lower left corner, we have a hand sanitizer station with a video screen. Lower right corner, we have video screens at the checkouts. Not a brand new idea. That was happening in the mid 90s too, but the ability to deliver uh, uh, quality messaging and measurable messaging was limited, not to mention the bulk of the monitors and the maintenance required. Um, Top right is the Instacart Caper shopping cart, which embeds messaging, ad messaging, along with self-checkout process in one unit. And there have been a lot of iterations of smart shopping carts over the years, haven't they? But maybe this is the one. Um, so in addition, there's some others that I've come across recently that I don't have images to share, but maybe some of you remember Coinstar, the change counting kiosks that are spread all over the landscape these days. I spoke with their sales leadership at the Digital Signage Experience trade show in Las Vegas a few months back and discussed with them their plans to mount video ad screens above their existing kiosks. And they have 60,000 of them. That's an instant retail media network if they get it stood up. I think that's in progress now. Um, we've also seen video screens mounted above the cooler doors in places like Circle K, convenience stores. And I'll bet everybody on this call has probably walked past the video pedestals that are operating in airports like DFW. I think JCDecaux is the vendor that has operated that for many years. So there are a lot of screens out there. Some of them qualify as retail media. Some are just digital out of home. Let's not parse the definitions too much. Um, the question is that is increasing the scale, this numerous opportunities, is this the same thing as a great value for brands? And well, you'll make up your own minds. So, sorry. So let's go back. This is kind of a recap with newer data from the scale of the retail media market. Um, eMarketer estimates it was about 41 billion. That's the amount of spend on retail digital media ad spend. I don't think this number incorporates much in store at all. In fact, I think that the methods that they use to gather this data haven't up to now incorporated that. So we'll see if they improve that in the future. But what's notable is that the margins on this spend for the retailer is massively higher than the margins that retailers earn selling products. And the volume obviously is expected to increase. The investor community kind of loves this. A retailer that's able to demonstrate high margin incremental revenue through a program is likely to be looked favorably upon by the investor community, and uh, and you know the cost of e-commerce fulfillment and delivery is another reason why this revenue is attractive, because it's expensive to get the product in shoppers' hands when they order online, and that's where I think a lot of the fascination began. Well, so here's a piece that I found, and incidentally, I should mention I've been doing a great deal of third-party research on this topic for one of my clients, and I came across this very interesting report from McKinsey that is focused on the European retail market, but it asked the questions I wish that were being asked here in the U.S., and I think a lot of the findings are relevant to this conversation. And what's notable is the negative or the downward pressure on margins that retailers and brands have been experiencing in the past year. And they're attributed by those researchers largely to inflation and to COVID, which makes sense. And so it's gotten harder to make a profit. There were some glory days there, weren't there? A year after the COVID uh, 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 crisis began, where retailers were really doing well. Inflation is hurting that, and so when margin pressure is on, then retailers need to consider, well, how are we going to make up for it? Um, uh, by the way, this McKinsey report, is called the State of Grocery Retail 2023 Europe. I also found in another McKinsey report this quote, which I think is outstanding. When done well, and I mean retail media, can unlock approximately 2 to 4% of online sales and positive EBIT contribution. The point being that that this changes the economic model potentially for many retailers. So no wonder they're knocking on your door, right, trying to persuade you to invest in their channels. Well, this presents a problem for brands, I think. Many of you believe it's important to have a retail media presence at your largest distributors, your largest retail partners. The audiences are big, but even if you were in all of the brands you see on this chart, it's not comprehensive coverage of your consumer base. And each retailer, furthermore, has its own interface, some have their own DSPs, the demand side platforms. They also have their own sales forces who are probably calling on you now. And those sales forces are not necessarily tightly connected in their objectives with the merchants that your sales team work with. It's kind of a divide, which I personally find concerning. It's something I want to talk to more brands about given the opportunity, because there's not a lot of research about how that's being perceived right now. Anyway, you slice it though, it's a lot of work for brands to take advantage of the retail media opportunity and make sure that they reach their audience everywhere where their audiences are. And there's dozens more. Networks are being stood up all over the place. And if you want to communicate with your shoppers where they actually are, the intricacy can get out of hand. I think that's one of the big issues right now, in store or on the digital side. And it's very important, I think, to most brands that they maintain their good will and their good relations and their success with those important regional brands, those regional retailers, excuse me. And so think of the Wegmans of the world, the Publix of the world, the Raley's of the world. They fall off the bottom of this list. Do you have the bandwidth to actually effectively buy and put up programs in those channels? I believe that's a big challenge right now based on anecdotal information I've heard, and I think it's ripe for further discussion, maybe even some research with our industry. So, but brands are investing, right? This also is McKinsey's European research, and they like retail media networks. The ability to provide personalization at scale and the efficiency that comes with that, to buy programmatically, which is a methodology that brands are now familiar with, having bought plenty of programmatic advertising in the digital world, and that closed loop measurability, which is more and more dependable. I think that's still a work in progress, but in general, you need that to understand that efficiency. And look at the numbers. Advertisers expect they're going to spend more, 90%. And this is Europe, but I think that it's transferable knowledge here for us. They consider this extremely important, 80%. 70% say that RMNs, retail media networks, are outperforming their other channels. I imagine we're going to see an update from McKinsey in the U.S. market in the near future, but this was their latest from the European side. So we're in the fourth evolution of collaboration between retailers and CPGs. Fourth evolution. This diagram was adapted from some work I did for Nielsen IQ last year. They're now called NIQ. And retail media has a decades-long history, and it began with those in-store promotional vehicles like the coupon machines and the Walmart video network and the video walls. Most of those happened in the late 90s. But it's been intertwined with traditional advertising, trade marketing, shopper marketing activities. They've been practiced over many years. So digitally enabled, data-driven retail media networks have made the conversation quite vibrant now. And there's a convergence it makes life complex, but also potentially allows brands to understand more accurately the impact of their advertising promotion activities and to steer their resources towards those that deliver on the objectives that they've established. So, grand convergence. So, shopper, trade, digital, loyalty, all of these are still essential foundational elements of the brand marketing process. Um, uh, uh, Recently, I got a copy of Caden Consulting Group's report on the 2022 marketing spend, and I thought this particular chart was quite interesting. How do the brands, because they survey consumers as well, what's influencing consumers? And trade promotion seems to still be the most significant factor when it comes to consumer decisions. Digital less so, or so they say, right? But the five avenues, these five sectors combined, add up to about 20 billion in total investment for the industry, um, and um, and each has its own objectives and strengths. So there's good reason to use all of these, but the proportions are changing as we discover the advantages of the newer options. Um, and Notably is how the money is shifted. And not shown here, but from the report, trade promotion is still capturing the largest share, and it's projected to be about 43% of spending in 2023. But in 2012, it was 50% of spend. Um, Meanwhile, digital is steadily gaining share and is projected to be about 24% of the brand marketers' outlay. And what's taken the hit? Well, traditional advertising spend. It's been cut literally in half over a decade, from 25% in 2012 to 13% this year. So clearly, and I know it's mostly brand marketers in the audience, you're voting with your wallets here. Digital clearly has become more important for you. So what's happening? We're starting to think of shoppers as audiences. So what's happened since the COVID? We referenced earlier how margin pressures have ratcheted up. At the same time, grocery audiences have come back to the store. And this bit of data is from grocery.tv and MotionWorks. And in fact, grocery.tv acquired MotionWorks, and they operate a network of screens in various locations in grocery stores around the country. Um, uh, they said the shoppers who visited their network had increased by 14% year over year in 2021 to 22. And by the way, their technology platform is designed to measure that engagement by shoppers, which is one of the key innovations now for in-store screens that know they're being seen. Key issue. So this could be sort of an instance. The swing back to the store may be an instance of superb timing for in-store media. Sometimes the chips fall right. Well, among the retailers that have the most prominent retail media networks, and this is worth noting, I think it's important, um, the in-store audiences are still larger than the digital audiences, and by significant increments. I'm looking at Walmart here, 212 million visits a month versus 140 million on its digital platform. Neither of those numbers is anything to sniff at, right? But the frequency of unique visitors, the stores still win when it comes to opportunities to engage. And by the way, unique monthly visitors may mean several visits per month. So the actual number of store visits is a multiple, um, by the way, and the online visits. So here again, these largest 13, right, the top 13 networks, um, uh, there's a desire to reach that audience in a way that's efficient, that's productive, that's measurable. Um, the issue is it only captures a segment, a large segment, but a segment of the audiences that brands want to reach across the entire retail landscape. So data like this on the next 100 chains is much harder to come by, as you can imagine, but it reflects many, many store visits as well. Let's just stand by, because I think that data is going to need to come. We just don't have it yet, at least not to my knowledge. So let's kind of review a little bit. So we have 3 revenue streams now, not just 2. Last year, I was talking about on-site and off-site as places where the digital retail media was being delivered, right? Now we're adding in-store. Well, I guess in-store was always there, but it hadn't risen to the level of attention and focus that it deserves right now. And they're distinct, but they're quite interconnected. And in fact, um, uh, brands realize that each of these channels, if you will, provides targeting opportunity, personalization opportunity, um, and they only can yield value in collaboration with your retail partners. I think it's a very important observation here, and retailers recognize that this is now a core part of their business. Right? They are now media companies. Maybe they always were or could have been, but today it is necessary to open the tap, if you will, for alternative revenues any way you can. And so just to review, on-site means the search and banner advertising, um, paid product listings that occur when a shopper interacts with with the retailer's website. Offsite means everything else that the retailer controls. It could be um, their digital footprint out in the social media world and elsewhere, which may be in some cases the best place for a brand to encounter their shoppers first in the shopper journey. And then in store, most notably, is very close to the end of the shopper journey for the 80% of those store visits. Um, uh, it's the original retail media, if you will. Incidentally, the frequency of opportunity there, and I haven't mentioned this before now, but we've seen digital end caps, we've seen kiosks, we've seen slow but gradually increasing adoption of interactive electronic shelf labels. Um, and arguably, even sampling and demos are a form of in-store media. It depends on how you want to interpret that. But they're all ways of delivering the message at that stage of the shopper journey. So it is, in my opinion, it is beneficial to think about the journey as a holistic thing. Messages that are delivered in the right way, at the right moments in the shopper's life, so that they hopefully yield the outcome that the brands desire. So, and do it in a very efficient and measurable way. So, what do brands like about retail media networks? Well, uh, this work done by Merkle, which is one of the important players in digital media buying, um, they show quite an interesting shift in priorities from the perspective of brands. The chart on the left is from 2020, and closed loop reporting uh, came to the top of the heap when it came to the benefits of retail media networks. And uh, brands, and the shopping experience, that's kind of a vague thing, in my opinion, but that's how the questions were phrased. Um, and well, look how different it is just 2 years later, the chart on the right. It's the relationship with the retailer. By the way, I think that's a code for something I'll explain in a minute. Um, access the to the retail media properties. What does access mean? Um, uh, I have some thoughts I want to share in a sec. So the key issue is that brands, I think, have come around that this is a good thing. Uh, the issue then is, well, what does it mean when we have a relationship with the retailer? Um, For me, this comes down to something we call collaboration. And collaboration is two things. It's a value, but it's also an activity. The value is we all like each other. We like to work together. We're committed to mutual benefit. Um, these are, I don't want to be cynical, but maybe platitudes in some ways. But I think they're genuine for the most part in our industry. Um, but there's also data collaboration where a platform is put up, um, and that allows both trading partners to have appropriate views of the data. Um, this is different from selling first party data. This is about sharing data when it is of mutual benefit to enable campaigns to be launched and to be monitored. Um, so I think that close relationship, in my mind, that's a code for something that's more important. It's establishing uh, 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 consistent patterns of working together and using the available technology to um, to make this what's the right word uh, to make this dependable, to make this um, uh, 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 a matter of shared data, not a matter of hopefully you believe what your partner is telling you. So collaboration is key. The platform makes it happen. So let's look at that a little bit in perspective. Um, I'm not hearing the word omni-channel as much lately. And by the way, I'm not necessarily that sorry about it. It was a term I never liked. Uh, but um, let's talk about a full funnel perspective, maybe, right? There are different messaging channels available to brands and retailers that affect different points of the shopper journey. And so retail media is not just digital advertising. By the way, this also comes from um, a Nielsen chart. Actually, I think it originates with Broadsign, which is a digital out of home operator. Um, so all these things, loyalty, digital marketing, digital out of home, in-store coupons, all things we've been talking about today, aren't they? They're all methods of communicating with the shopper in the appropriate manner at an appropriate point of their shopping journey. And so uh, they can be connected together potentially, but it's not that easy, right, to close this circle. And from the brand's perspective, and again, here's another conversation I haven't heard a lot of detail about. And by the way, anybody on this audience who wants to set me straight on this, by all means, you'll have my email address at the end. Please enlighten me. But I think that there's still a lot of work in progress about how to put the pieces together. Um, uh, it's important to personalize or hyper personalize offers and messages. That's in the name of efficiency. To measure them accurately to the extent possible, and here's the big one: to attribute which of those messages had what amount of effect on a shopper's ultimate decision to buy or not to buy. So uh, that's a challenge I think that we're still scratching the surface on. And some of you folks on the brand marketer side may disagree. Maybe you're better at it than I know, but to me, that's where some of the big prize is in this. All right. So the promise and limitations. Um, this is a few years old picture of a video wall, I think, in a Target. But digital signage networks in the past had limitations. They were location bound. They were not targeted. They were waiting for shopper discovery. It was hard to really prove and measure engagement. Um, and I've heard this, and some of you may chuckle. Some brands felt they were pressured to invest in these channels. Maybe true today, I don't know, but maybe the investment wasn't directly related to an actual result, but more to a relationship value with the retailer. Um, Today, we're seeing screens that know when they're being watched. Think about the grocery TV screens that we mentioned, and there are others, broad signs, um, and that provide data streams in the physical store environment that approach slightly the data streams that we see at times, or that we become used to in the digital environment. So digital out of home, I mean, it's all over, right? The airports, kiosks I mentioned. There are a lot of places now where there's outdoor and public space advertising. Um, if you're looking at the whole picture as a brand, ideally you'd like to be able to consider that whole spectrum of channels, I think, um, in a single decision process. Uh, this, I think, is uh, again, I think this is also a work in progress. So I said, what do shoppers think about all this? So none of this means a lot unless the shopper is moved. The Path to Purchase Institute published some real good research, I thought, last summer. And what do shoppers like about in-store media? How do they feel about it? And so good for them for asking the shopper. And number one is it's the deal, right? A great deal. And the deals, when they're super efficient, maybe those deals can be even a little sharper within the appropriate level of investment in some instances, or certainly really targeted towards people who care about the particular product or particular category. Um, uh, then I thought, creative still matters, right? They should be engaged. Think about the competition you have versus all of the TikTok videos and the reels that people are watching on their social media every day, sometimes for hours every day. You want to break through that clutter? Well, you better have a high quality presentation of your brand message there. And then finally, an awareness opportunity to build new products. Um, in general, we can debate whether these numbers are high or not. It's a multiple choice survey, but it seems to me that shoppers derive numerous benefits from this, and that's a good thing. It means that there's great opportunity for brands to keep using retail media. So we're coming down to something that we talked about last year, right? A little academic context, if you will, because that's where I come from that retail media ecology principle. The physical store is an environment, a communications environment with innumerable brand messages. It depends what you want to count. If you want to count the package labels that all the brands invest so much money in creating, it's hundreds of thousands of messaging opportunities per store, per visit. Uh, that's a lot of clutter, maybe, but shoppers are trained. They know how to filter this, and now we're adding new messaging opportunities into the environment. Um, uh, Media ecology, by the way, a field I studied some years ago, it's about understanding the interrelationships among symbols and media and culture. That's an academic definition, but uh, uh, the fact is it's informative. It helps us understand how this all fits together. In the end, we're in the business of affecting the minds of our shoppers in a way that leans them more favorably towards our products. And understanding the total environment is a distinct advantage in doing that well. Um, so there's a strong tradition of putting these messages in the store, but as I've said in the past, the store itself is dissolving, right? In the digital era, the walls are more and more permeable, if you will, and the shopping experience is much less bound by the physical space. And I've called this the incredible dissolving store in the past. I guess I like catchphrases. So retail media presents a continuum of interactions, right, that span consumers' lives. Um, the catch is that measuring attribution is a bitch. I don't think I'm saying anything that you don't already know. Um, but we can all understand how stacking the moments can lead to more conversions. We'll get better and better at understanding which specific interactions have which effect on a shopper's ultimate decision. So I want to kind of wrap up the formal presentation with this question about regionals. This is something I've worried about for the last year. What if you want to reach customers at your important pardon me, shoppers at your important customers like Meyer, like Wegman, like Giant Eagle, like Rayleigh's, Stop and Shop. I mean, they're regionally very important. You don't write these folks off just because the top 10 retailers that you do business with, or the top 8, have sales teams that are calling on you now and trying to soak up all your attention and time. Uh, your shoppers are in some cases loyal to those retail brands. How are you going to incorporate all of them? Well, many of those brands are trying to work out the best way to participate in the retail media, gold rush, if you will. Um, and I'm sure many of you in the audience are far more expert than I am about how media buying is actually happening. But it's a steep learning curve for everybody. And there needs to be, I think, some kind of consolidation or clearinghouse processes that come into play. And there are a few outfits that are, there are different flavors of those that are proposed. The company I've worked with, Nielsen IQ, is offering one. Criteo brand, which acquired Brand Crush, Australian company. They provide a buying process. Uh, uh, there are agencies that are stepping up. There are a variety of network companies, and I mentioned grocery TV before. Interesting because of the physical store environment. How do you put that all together, right? Um, uh, are you working with a gatekeeper, or are you trying to do that with your own team? Um, as I've observed earlier, I feel like there's a lot of pressure on brand teams now, on brand marketers, to put together enough resources to make intelligent buys and take advantage of the measurability and the learnings that are available when they invest in digital retail media and in-store retail media. So I think that puts us, I hope, in reasonable timing. Uh, as usual, I, uh, 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 I probably left this conversation with more questions asked than answered, but I certainly am interested in your questions, and will try my best to answer them.
Sure. We have two that came in, Jamie, so far.
Thank you.
First one, yeah, how can data transparency be ensured between retail media partners?
Well, I think the platform is everything. The notion of you know uh, uh, monetizing first-party data sounds like you're going to sell data files. Um, uh, that's really not how it works. Um, Brands need appropriate access to their desired audiences, and they need an ability to plan, and they need an ability to access their past campaign performance so they can adjust their plans and iterate, if you will, improve their approach. So, and they even need instant access. So, if something's not working, why would you have to wait till a month later to see how badly it went, when you might be able to make in-campaign adjustments in some cases, or even just cut them off if it's just not delivering? I don't think there's a lot of standardization for these platforms yet. There are quote unquote connected collaboration platforms put up by various organizations. Um, Some of you may do business with certain retailers that have asked you to subscribe to their platforms. I'm aware of some instances of that, and they probably sell you pretty hard on picking up your fair share of the cost. Um, I think I think as the retail media um, trend expands, it's going to be more important to standardize this approach to a degree. But ultimately, it comes back to um, permission-based access to the right subset of data, um, and enables sort of a self-serve process for the brands, or one that can be they can have their professionals work on. So again, it's um, it's the only way. You can't walk into the stores and measure on a consistent basis. I know there's auditing that's done, but it's probably a lot better to have appropriate view of the sales results from a campaign, for example. Uh, so it's This is also an area where I think the evolution is still happening at a fair clip, and it'll be interesting to see what, uh, if you will, standards will be set in the next couple of years.
Okay, another question. What are retailers most looking for when they bring digital retail media into the store?
Well, I was going to be cheeky and say the money, um, and believe me, it's partly that, but they also they don't want to um, uh, undermine what makes them successful as store retailers by junking up the place, right? So that means when they decide to put a communications device or a channel in their retail environment, it has to meld smoothly with their retail concept. Sure, it'll change the experience a bit for shoppers, but it would be pretty foolish in pursuit of a short-term gain of revenue to lose faith with your shoppers. So I really believe retailers are quite thoughtful about this. Um, I think also that in the case of a network that proposes to install, let's say, monitors in your retail stores as well as other retailers' stores, um, they probably appreciate uh, the um, uh, the intermediation, if you will, in the sales side of things. I don't know if that's regarded as redundant now or not. I've been hearing anecdotally that um, uh, the largest retailers have pretty significant dedicated sales teams now that are selling retail media. Um, that may or may not be practical for the important second tier or mid tier retailers. Um, but in general, they want to maintain what makes them great in the eyes of their shoppers, and not undermine it with what looks like uh, interference with the shopping process.
Okay. Next question. What retailers are leading the charge in putting up digital retail media in store?
It's a great question. Honestly, it's those few largest. Um, Walmart probably stands out the most. They've had their video network in various forms for literally decades, and again, they're proud, I think, of that enormous enormous audience. Uh, uh, it's I don't know if I know. I don't know if I have that data, to be honest. Who's doing what now? Uh, I'm seeing anecdotally on my own store visits that there are a few more screens around, and it's possible that I haven't visited enough stores to understand who's doing what and where. Um, uh, right now, I'm pretty sure that it's the it's their suppliers that are advocating hard. So at NRF this year and at Shop Talk too, you see evidence that partners like Instacart or some of uh, uh, the electronic shelf label companies are trying to stand up um, uh, improvements that allow communications to be spread widely across their customer base. Um, I don't know that retailers are building these in-store channels from scratch. I think it's a matter of deciding among the options that are offered to them by third-party vendors.
Okay, well, that's all the time we have for questions. Um, if anybody has further questions for James Tenser on this topic, you can reach out to him via email at jtenser@vsnstrategies.com. I'm sure he'll be happy to get your call and continue the conversation. Thank
Very
you
much.
for that. Thank you for that great presentation, by the way.
Thanks for having me. Good day, everybody.